very concerned about what's going on. So, are you ready to be forced to take strangers into your home? I know that sounds unbelievable, but then no, most of us never would have believed the government would lock the country down for years over a virus either, would they? Canada's marching towards a national catastrophe as the government's refusing to even consider reducing the immigration numbers while our housing construction lags. This isn't a matter of my opinion. This is just simple math. The government plans to bring in nearly 1.5 million immigrants into Canada in the next 3 years, while we're expecting to construct about 700,000 new housing units over that period. So where on earth does the government think we're going to put all these new Canadians? I mean, Canada's a winter country. It's not as if we could set up massive tent camps to hold the immigrants for a few years while we figure out what to do with them. People need shelter with solid walls and heat for 6 months of the year. So what's the plan? Are we going to house the immigrants in community halls and gymnasiums? That won't be sustainable for terribly long. And I mean, again, the immigrants aren't necessarily coming in destitute. Many have funds, and they're going to be finding homes in the existing market. But that, of course, will push rents higher and purchase prices for homes higher. And Canada's already experiencing a housing affordability crisis. Then there's the healthcare shortage. Everybody's already having a hard time finding a family doctor. The lineups for specialty treatments are, people are suffering. They're long. Well, how is bringing millions of new Canadians in going to impact the healthcare availability and services in years to come? Now, what it's going to lead to, unfortunately, is tensions between current Canadians and new immigrants as citizens find themselves pushed into possibly homelessness by the surge in immigration. And that's not fair to the immigrants who are just simply seeking a new life or a home. But let's not pretend that this isn't going to happen. The ire, of course, should be directed at the legislators who refuse to back down on the ridiculous immigration targets. So why is the government so hung up on bringing in millions of people when we clearly don't have the infrastructure and services to handle them? Well, the Trudeau government's created a budgetary pyramid scheme or even a Ponzi scheme. You see, with the massive increases in deficit spending, the government needs to try and pump the economy through your immigration, or it's going to crash. It's an artificial way to buy prosperity. But like any pyramid scheme, eventually the bottom becomes too wide. You can't keep widening it and it won't sustain it, and the structure is going to collapse. Now, I think most of these top decision makers are hoping and assuming they'll have retreated to their retirement destinations before it all falls apart. It's pretty cold comfort for us commoners, however. The push, though, when getting back to what I asked to start with, to force citizens to rent out rooms in their homes, it will start, and it's going to start as a soft sell. In fact, it's already begun. In Nova Scotia, their housing minister pointed out that there's 130,000 vacant bedrooms across that province that could be rented out to ease the housing crisis. Well, that's quite a suggestion. It's troublesome on a couple of fronts. I mean, for one, how does he know how many vacant bedrooms the province has? Well, remember all those questions that seemed so intrusive on the census form when they asked you about how many bathrooms you had and such? Well, now you see the sort of thing that information gets you used to. You can also see why, not just why they wanted to know, but why you probably shouldn't have cooperated with the census. The other issue is we have a senior government official looking at those, as for now, spare rooms with an eye to compelling people to rent them out. We know the progression of government when they do these things. The next step is going to be shaming people. People with large houses or empty nesters with spare bedrooms are going to be called selfish if they don't rent those rooms out. The politics of envy will come into play, and the government's going to demand homeowners do their fair share, they love that term, in easing the crisis. And of course, they will imply that holdouts are racist, though, again, immigrants come in all colors, as do the existing homeowners and people residing in Canada. It isn't a matter of racism, it's a matter of statistics and ability. When the social shaming, though, doesn't work, the government will use its favorite tool to compel people to do things. They'll move on to taxes. In the UK, there's already what they call an empty bedroom tax. And Canadians on social media are already hinting that that might be a good idea here. Let's just call it what it is, though. It's a fine for those daring not to help the government with the immigration catastrophe it has created. So even with the social ostracization and the extra taxation, though, there's still people aren't going to comply. If they wanted to rent their spare rooms to strangers, they already would have. So then as tensions escalate across the nation due to growing homelessness, clashes between immigrants and citizens, the government will use its trump card. This will sound familiar. They'll declare a national emergency. Then they can suspend civil rights, and people can be compelled to open their doors through the threat and seizure of things like their bank accounts or possibly even their property itself. It'll be for the public good, though, of course, right? That's why. Does this all sound far-fetched? Well, remember what happened when we were told just 2 weeks to flatten the curve? Authoritarians in power in Canada are capable of anything, and they've already proven that. We don't need to halt all immigration. That would be bad for the nation. We need to lower the numbers, though, to match the housing ability and infrastructure. Otherwise, we are on a collision course with a catastrophe.